My name is Sarah Gergel, and I work with the Living Archives Project, where we are collecting stories of how COVID-19 impacted various communities in the Mecklenburg County. Today is October 5th, 2022, and there are 209 cases of COVID-19 in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, which is a 26% decrease over the last 2 weeks. Therefore, for the comfort of each subject, we are not wearing masks today. Would you introduce yourself, Kellye?
I am Dr. Kellye Hall, MD.
Awesome. And tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in Soul City, North Carolina. Google it, it's real. Okay. There's a whole message behind the civil rights era and all that. I actually was born in Rochester, New York, but then was there for only 10 months. So I can't say that I'm a New York native. So Soul City is where I identify. I lived there as a child all the way up into adulthood until I went to college. And I went to North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, Aggie Pride. So I identify as an Aggie all the way. And so Aggie Pride. And I went to medical school at Brody School of Medicine in East Carolina. So I am 99% Aggie, 1% Pirate. Okay. And I did my residency there as well. And I am now a mother after 44 long years of life. And yes, and married to my wonderful husband, Eric. And just, I'm an Aggie born, Aggie bred. When I die, I'll be Aggie dead person.
I love it so much. So you said that you're a doctor. What kind of doctor are you?
I am an emergency physician. Okay. And I did emergency medicine for 13 years and then was in urgent care for 4.
Wow.
And I'm semi-retired right now.
Okay, I love it. So do you work contingent at all, or are you just...
No, I have not. I have taken a step back. I have not worked clinically since October 22nd, I believe, of last year.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about why did you step back?
COVID. That's the main reason. But there's little sub pockets, if you will, of why the business of medicine is kind of destroying medicine for the people actually taking care of patients. It's no longer doctor or provider centered, it's more patient centered. So we went from the paternalistic medicine all the way to patient satisfaction and business of medicine. And so we need to meet somewhere in the middle because the business of medicine, the money involved, the politics behind it all makes it difficult to practice medicine the way we need to be able to practice medicine. So that was one element that I was already experiencing prior to COVID. And then, so my group in particular, we were trying to sort of take back medicine from corporate entities. Yeah. Won't name any names, but we tried it and didn't work out too well. There's a whole story if you look up Lakeside Family Physicians and One Health Family Medicine. I'm gonna leave it at that because there was a lawsuit involved in that. Okay. But long story short, this is public information, so I shouldn't get in trouble for it. But we resigned from a group, then we got fired a month later. And this was all in the height of the pandemic. Wow. So we ended up going back to corporate medicine. And I was with a particular group for 18 months. And after kind of getting more stabilized with the studio, I was already kind of 1 foot out the door. I kind of had enough after just experiencing the disrespect that people had for medical providers and people listening to politicians instead of scientists who had been doing this sort of thing for our entire lives or our entire careers. Or for me, it was entire life because I wanted to be a doctor since the age of 2. So I had been working towards being a doctor since the age of 2. Yeah. So that's long story short. There's so many different pockets of that I'm going to put in a memoir. Yeah. And I've already written one memoir, so I'm going to do another memoir, which is like, that was me going into medicine. This memoir will be me kind of stepping away from medicine and going more into the dance industry.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to come back to dance.
Right.
So I love that. But sticking with, you being a doctor and
Yes.
working during the COVID pandemic, what was that like for you?
Oh, it was crazy. In the beginning, it's like we didn't know what COVID was, what it was about. So that January 2020, it was, I don't think the first case ended up in North Carolina until about February, I think it was. I can't recall it exactly, but in the beginning, it was like, okay, so this is something overseas. I guess it may come over here. It wasn't a big deal initially until it was.
Yeah.
And then once it was like, holy crap, we don't know what this is. We don't know how to treat it. We're not sure how it is transmitted. Like, we know absolutely nothing. And I'm the kind of person, because I'm an emergency physician and have like the immune system given from God, I hardly ever get sick.
Yeah.
So I would never wear masks when I was dealing with patients that had the flu. So, initially it was like, oh, this is just a flu.
Okay.
That's what we thought. So I'm pretty sure at some point I probably had COVID, because actually, and I say it all the time, the November prior, I was the sickest I had ever been in life. So I was like, I really think COVID was here before we actually knew it was here, but whatever. There's no evidence behind that. But so many people were getting like these illnesses that they had never had before. And like, I felt like I was going to die at one point. And I was like, this is crazy. But then got better. And then that January, February, March, where we weren't wearing masks, where we weren't, following all these protocols, I never got sick. So that's why I said I had to have had it beforehand. But either way,
Because you probably...
I was going in rooms with patients that had COVID and didn't get it. So I was like, I had it initially. I know I did.
Yeah.
I probably was like patient 2.
For sure. Who knows?
So either way, but yeah, once we figured out that it was so deadly, so that's when the whole shutdown happened. So the studio had to shut down, but I was still essential because I was still working in medicine.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when the shutdown happened, people weren't out and about, so we weren't that busy. And that was when we had just, we were with the group that fired us. So they started doing some things, and it just was an interesting sort of, my medical career is unlike most people's, but either way. So we didn't have that many patients initially.
Okay.
And we, in the urgent care, and all the family practice, because I was in a family practice-based urgent care, all the family practice doctors had most of their patients, but none of the sick patients were coming to be seen. Like, we were only having well visits, and then we started doing virtual visits. Mm-hmm. So for a while, it was like crickets and tumbleweeds. Ooh. For a while, it was like crickets and tumbleweeds. Like, we'd see maybe 5-6 patients throughout the day.
Okay.
Then, once we slowly started opening back up, I think that's when the mask mandate started happening. So still wasn't that busy. It wasn't until the Delta variant where that's when the post-traumatic stress happens.
Okay.
Because at that time, politics was all involved. Mm-hmm. So people were not wanting to wear a mask, not wanting to get vaccinated, which I understand, because in the beginning, it's like, well, we don't know anything about this vaccine.
Yeah.
So that was a whole other can of worms. But because I was seeing patients directly with COVID, I was like, well, I know what COVID does to people because I had seen and heard so many people dying from it. Yeah. And I still had contact with my emergency medicine colleagues, so I was getting their side of the story as well. Yeah. I was like, well, I'm going to get it one way or the other, so I'd rather take my chance with the vaccine. But I kid you not, I said, okay, Lord, if this vaccine is safe, let them call me. Because you basically volunteer and then you don't hear anything unless you're chosen. Yeah. And so didn't hear anything for like 2 months. Okay. And then all of a sudden I get this call and it's like, well, do you want to participate in the COVID vaccine trial? And I said, all right, Jesus, I hear you. Okay. So I was one of the volunteers for the COVID vaccine trial. Wow. And then it was the Moderna study. So I actually read through the consent, like all 48 pages of it. No way. And yes. And, but as a doctor, I could understand the science behind it. Yeah. And so once I realized it wasn't an actual live or an activated virus, I was like, oh, this is like genetically modified and made in a lab. Cool. I can do this. So did that. The study actually doesn't end until this month, so you were in it for 2 years. So, yeah, so initially, you don't know if you're getting a placebo or the actual vaccine.
Okay.
And so the first shot, I felt nothing. I was like, oh, I got a placebo. Like, whatever. Like, this is great. Like, I'm taking care of patients and I have a placebo. And I wanted to continue the study.
Yeah.
So you have to not get the actual vaccine once it does become available.
Okay.
Second shot, I had the chills, the nausea, the headache, all that night. And I said, oh, I got the actual vaccine. Yay. I was actually excited.
Yeah.
And then took some ibuprofen and some medicine for nausea. And the next morning I was fine. So only had symptoms the night of the shot. But after that, it was just kind of practice as usual once the vaccine actually became approved and people started getting it. Some people, there was a lot of doubt in the beginning, which I understand, but I was like, you gotta take your chance. You're either gonna die from COVID or take your chance with the vaccine. And it was so hard to get people to understand that, hey, guys, like, you're literally gambling with your life. Especially the Black community, the whole Tuskegee experiment. And the funny thing is, with the Tuskegee experiment, they actually were withholding treatment. So that was the whole thing. I was like, well, with the Tuskegee experiment, they weren't giving treatment when it was offered. Like, we have the treatment, you guys aren't taking it. So y'all don't even know what the whole premise was of the Tuskegee experiment.
A lot of confusion.
Yeah. So, but then that's the Black community. But then you have the, people who the anti-vaxxers who were just because of political reasons, just wouldn't get it. Then people would fight us over the masks. So when we were seeing patients inside the clinic, they didn't want to wear the mask sometimes. And so you're like, well, I don't want to take care of you because you are putting me at risk. So that's when we started doing the outdoor visits. So I had always had this joke on nice days where I'd be like, oh, it'd be great to see patients outside. Yeah. Never in a million years did I imagine I would actually be seeing patients primarily outside.
Wow.
So that was a whole other thing I wasn't used to, is we were running back and forth in and out of the building, seeing patients, testing patients. And at one point we were seeing 40, 45 patients per day. So to go from 5 to 40 in a 2-week period, it was crazy. Once the mask mandate went away and that's when Delta came, that's when, and I knew it. I was predicting how COVID was going, because once I kind of saw it, I was the predictor of what's happening next. So I was telling dancers and family, and I was like, all right, I already know what's going to happen. So the mask mandate is going away. In a month, we're going to be in trouble. In a month, we were in trouble. And so, all along the way, I was able to predict just from my own clinical experience what is happening. So, yeah, that's where the post-traumatic stress comes in. And then, like I said, I would take care of patients, and some of them would because we'd come out there in full gear, mask, shield, goggles, gown, gloves, all that. And if they had even a sniffle, we're testing you for COVID. Yeah. And some people, you're not testing me for COVID. Hello, I'm Dr. Hall, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. And it was a fight. Every day there was a fight. And I just got to the point to where I was like, I can't stand people anymore. Yeah. You go into medicine wanting to help people, and then people are literally taking your ability to help them away from you. So I'm like, so I'm not doing anything. Why am I here? You're not listening to me anyway. And it wasn't everybody, but you just remember the negative experiences so much more than the positive experiences, because some people be like, thanks for your service. I was in the military, never been in the military, but it was the most interesting thing. That, it was a life or death scenario. Yeah. So I get it, but no one had ever thanked me just for coming to see them. Wow. So that's me trying to put 18 months of COVID in however long I spoke.
Seriously, Kellye, wow.
Yeah, this next memoir is going to be off the chain. The first one was great, but the second one is gonna be like, are you serious?
Oh my gosh.
So,
So, I mean, I can imagine with people being so confused that they were taking it out on you incredible health providers who are trying to save their lives and support them and help them. But
well, and with the political climate the way that it was, some of it was more than confusion. Some of it was just entitlement and just people just being rude.
Yeah.
Like, it was cool to be rude all of a sudden. Like, nobody, there's not consequences for yelling at people, for treating people horribly, because we have people in leadership treating people that way and getting away with it, which is still going on today, but whole other can of worms.
Yeah. So, kind of talking a little bit more into your experience, what led you to finally saying enough is enough?
So I started dancing at the studio in 2018. Okay. So once I got into urgent care, I had more time. Always been a dancer. I'm the first female drum major of the Blue and Gold March Machine at A&T. Wow. So whole other story.
Yeah.
But so that just kind of tells of my dance background. Sorority girl, so in step shows, choreographing musical transitions for step shows. So that's always been something fun for me to do. Never intended to go into it as a career because, back then there wasn't social media. I grew up, in the 80s, 90s. So we would see music videos, but there's no social media. Today, you can become a TikTok star and people are suddenly throwing money at you. Back then, you had to be the creme de la creme to be able to make it as a dancer in the industry, or you had to be somewhere like LA, Atlanta, New York. I grew up in a rural area where all we had was tap and ballet as a kid, or they were still doing it at high school as well, but I got bored with it after like 2 years, and I was like, all right, I'm out. So then started getting into sports and band and all that kind of stuff. But so, it wasn't a thing to be a dancer for me because I didn't know any professional dancers, whereas I knew doctors and lawyers and professional people. So my parents both had master's degrees. So education was always just the way to go.
Right.
And I mean, it's a stable lifestyle. You make good money, yada, yada. So that's kind of why I never really put any effort, I would say, into dancing. I always just did it for fun. Then once I got out of the emergency department and had time, I said, well, let's, I'm about to be 40. I don't exercise because I don't like it, even though it may look like I'm fit. Like I'm fit more because of dance. Yeah, but I was not exercising at all at that point because I don't like exercise, can't stand it. Although dance is exercise, but I think of dance as fun. So exercise is not fun, dance is. And actually the founder of the studio at that time, she came to a community service day that Delta Sigma Theta had, and I was part of the Delta Gems committee. So that committee was devoted to mentoring young high school women. Okay. So she did a class for our teens, and I had so much fun in the class. Like I think I had more fun than the teens did actually. And so I was like, well, I'm going to check out her studio because, of course she plugged the studio. So I started looking into her background and the studio's background, and I was completely awestruck. I was like, oh my gosh, she was for real. Like she had performed with some of Beyonce's dancers, not with Beyonce, but in other projects. And and then she's a former Bobcats dancer. That brief time where the Hornets were the Bobcats.
Okay.
So she's an NBA dancer, or a former NBA dancer. So came to the studio, and she actually remembered me from the community service day. It was a whole month later, which was surprising to me. So I was like, oh, you actually remembered me. You actually saw me. And, you would think as a physician, you're used to being acknowledged or what have you, but as a Black female physician, sometimes you're overlooked. And so I think it was just that recognition where we had this brief encounter and she remembered me, and so that actually kind of stuck with me. I was like, oh, wow, she saw me, which is, like I said, it's weird. I don't feel seen sometimes in the medical community because of other factors, whereas she saw me. So either way, whole other can of worms. But I started coming to the studio regularly, and we have a seasonal performance that we do. So that winter 2018, I was part of that show. And I had never stepped foot outside of a beginner class until January of 2019. Because as a self-taught dancer, I had the sense to know you're not going to go into professional studio with other people who've been doing this for a while and catch on. So hang out in beginner. And then I saw the other classes in that performance. I hadn't seen them until the dress rehearsal the night before.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, like these are regular people. Some of them were actual professionals, but a lot of them were regular everyday people like me, doctors, real estate agents, lawyers, pharmacists, that were in this show. And after the show was over, I was like, this is amazing. Like, it was like a whole, like I already loved it, but then there was a whole new fire. And Anna, the founder, she said, well, you're stuck with us now. Like,
Wow.
And that little sentence stuck with me. And then once we were back in classes in January, I was in everyone's class. Like anytime I was not working in the evening, I was at the studio. Unless I had something else to do, but most of the time I didn't. So then we were having our summer show, 2019, but she had actually closed, she didn't renew the lease for the studio in May. So we're like rehearsing for this show, but knowing that once the show is over, we have no studio to go back to. And that was like the ultimate tearjerker for all of us that danced at the studio because we just loved it. It was like almost like a sorority type feel, a family type organization. And we do have guys that dance here too. So I say sorority, but it's because it's majority female. But so yeah, it was like, crap, this is over.
Wow.
And then it wasn't though, because Anna and I had become friends at that point. It wasn't just about coming to class. We actually formed a friendship that was a God ordained sort of thing. And one day I said, this can't be over. And I'm a full-time doctor and I just signed a contract, a 4-year contract to continue with this group. There's no way I can open a studio right now. But at least let me talk to Anna about it before she goes to LA. So, and she's the kind of person that's so busy doing so many things that if you text her, you may not hear from her for 4 hours, 4 days, whatever. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I texted her and said, I'm thinking that maybe I should open a studio, but I would only want to do it if I could franchise your brand. And, I feel like I'm crazy for thinking this because I'm a doctor. I've never been a professional dancer like you. So can I take you out to lunch just to kind of talk through it? And within 10 minutes, she texted me back and said, what are you doing Thursday? Stop. And so I was like, I'm really doing this, aren't I? Because it was like sort of over my life, there's been things that just kind of become something I feel like I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I realized that was a God sort of discernment. And so I kind of knew that's where it was headed, but I was like, okay, he's kind of calling me to do this, but maybe he's just calling me to kind of step out of my comfort zone, and I'm not really supposed to do this. So when she said, what are you doing Thursday? And I was like, okay, I guess I really am. But so we met, and I told her, I have a 4-year contract. I'm not doing this immediately. And she's like, okay, cool. So we just kind of talked, and she, asked me why I wanted to do it, why I wanted to do it, and all these different things, sort of mentoring me. Now, mind you, she's 7 years younger than I am.
Okay.
So that's a whole other thing. Just being able to be humble, because I'm a physician,
Totally.
And
It's pretty rare.
right. So that was a humility point, but I was able to step back because at that point I was her student.
Yeah.
So that's why I was able to step back from my leadership role and be like, I don't know what I'm doing because I'm a student at this point. So the next time we met, because she was like, well, let's just, meet weekly or bi-weekly and just kind of talk this through. So I said, you know what? If I don't do this soon, all that she's built, we're basically going to be starting over from scratch anyway. So the next meeting, I said, well, I'm feeling like we need to do this sooner than later, but not now. And she's like, okay, cool. So let's reopen in January. And I'm like, January what? Mind you, this is like September 2019.
Stop it.
And I'm like, what, January 2023? And she's like, no, like January 2020.
Whoa.
I'm like, you know what? Why not? I have stepped so far out of my comfort zone by even taking the first dance class that we're just gonna ride the wave and go with it. And so we started looking for a building, found this building, and it was a warehouse. So just if you were to see what it looked like initially, you had to know that I had a vision in my mind for what I wanted the place to look like, because it looked nothing like this. It looked like some dump. Just because, like I said, it was a construction company that was using it. So this space, like the front was office space, so that looked fine. But this was like chaotic, and it was a mess. But I was like, I already know what I want to do. And with Anna's help, she was able to kind of guide me along. Well, we need this. We need floors. We need mirrors. The color scheme was already there because of Dance District, the brand.
Okay.
So we ended up, basically rejuvenating the whole building, and then found out that because this was warehouse space, we had to do this application and this process to turn it into an assembly status for the county.
Okay.
So did a soft opening,
Okay.
and then shut right back down.
Stop it.
Because we were not allowed to have more than 17 people in this building because of the code status.
Whoa.
So all that we had done, this wall, we had to rip it down,
No.
get an architect, the whole nine. Mind you, this is January. March, we can't open because we're no longer essential. Well, we were never essential, but we're not essential.
Yeah.
So we had to shut down, which was a gift and a curse.
Okay.
A gift because we needed to do work on the building anyway.
Yeah.
A curse because the amount of work we were going to have to do was going to cost a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
And because we had a new tax ID number, we were not able to get some of the funding that other businesses were able to get from being established.
Whoa.
We were essentially a new business now.
Yeah.
So I was only able to get a little bit of loan money from the government. Luckily, I was still working as a doctor. So I call them doctor dollars. My doctor dollars were able to keep the building or the studio afloat while we weren't able to have any classes, while we needed to get all this work done. And a 4-week project turned into a 4-month project because the person that was the inspector that was supposed to approve the work we did, we got to the final stage and he kept denying our drawings that the architect gave because of this wall that was connected to a photography suite next door. Because there's a fire code sort of thing that you have to abide by. And because of these metal beams that are here, there had to be like a fire stop sort of thing so that the fire would spread to the next suite.
Yeah.
And so he kept denying that one thing. We're like, if you know what we need to do, just tell us.
Yes.
He denied it like 3 times.
So frustrating.
Yes. So it was like, okay, God.
And this is all during COVID.
All during COVID.
Like the pandemic is here and this is all happening.
Yep. Ball is down. It's April. We're just waiting for approval to
And you're
continue the work.
juggling, literally seeing like 45 patients a day, juggling being a doctor and redoing
In this
everything.
studio. Yes. And meanwhile, my business partner, because this was her whole life at one point, she didn't have a full-time day job. So this was her life. Luckily, there were still some gigs that she was able to do, more from like modeling and you know, these sort of things, but nowhere near what she was used to doing, because she had this and so many branches of revenue off of this. So without this, she was in a whole other, you know, element herself. So she had plenty of time to do marketing and to keep, you know, thoughts to keep us alive and relevant until we could reopen. So thankful for her vision and her marketing background, because she has a degree in marketing. So she was able to keep us alive and keep us relevant. We did virtual classes. We did stupid TikTok videos. Like, we were doing all sorts of stuff just to keep our name alive, so that people would start to come back. And we did outdoor classes in July, hot, but we couldn't be indoors. So we were outside doing outdoor classes for free.
Everything for free.
Yes. Wow. Yes. So you can just imagine the financial strain that was going on at that point.
Oh my goodness.
But we figured, you know, people need to dance.
Yeah.
So many people have died. We don't have a cure or treatment for this yet. We're still working on a vaccine.
Yeah.
We're gonna dance.
Yeah.
And we were thankful for that. We had, you know, 30, 40 people that would come out on Saturdays and take class. So I'm gonna send you those videos.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Yeah. So, but they were people that had been dancing here and, you know, were part of the community, and wanted to get out and dance as well. And so
I bet it was just a way, one, for people to connect, because
we were shut down for so long, and indoors for like the winter, winter, spring.
And just the ability to get moving again, moving their body, and you know, I can imagine
that in itself, trying to get people to like get out once they had been in for so long. You get lazy and complacent and don't want to do anything. So
oh, wow, so you had, how often did you do those outside?
just Saturdays. So we would do 2 classes at 12 and 1. And we did that in July and August, and then September we were actually able to come back, because by that point the work was done, or at least one side was done. We were still kind of doing work back and forth until we were finally done. I think it was October, but and then that's when the brick wall came. Like, it gave us time to like do even more, because initially it was just a white wall. But then we were like, let's do something cool. So we did the brick. So this is actual real brick.
That's amazing.
They're like little pallets. They're not like a whole brick, but like thin slices of brick.
I love it.
Yeah, so we wanted to give it the gritty hip hop feel. Whereas the other side is just kind of a white wall, because we do have people that will rent out the studio to record, so or take pictures. So we have that side, which looks completely different. Studio K for Kelly, Studio A for Anna.
Awesome.
Yeah. So but either way, so but classes in the beginning were, and classes were like slow. No. Because, you know, like I said, at this point we still don't have treatment. So people are scared to come out. And people are really scared to dance, because, you know, it's like we were dancing with masks at that point. But still.
That must have been tough, though.
Yeah, it builds stamina. And then some people, of course, were like, hated it. We're like, well, you don't have to come. But, you know, it's just like, I mean, we did have garage doors, so we would open the garage doors when they got, you know, a little bit cooler. But, so that was interesting, dancing with masks. And then once LA opened back up and we had some of the LA and Atlanta choreographers come, like, they had to be really, really strict, because they were trying to book gigs with artists, and the artists were not letting them perform if they had COVID. So a lot of those people were like, they have to wear a mask. What's your mask policy? Which, me being a doctor, I was like, they have to wear masks, because I know the science behind it. I don't care, you know, there's the business, but I'm also a doctor, so I got to be responsible too. So we didn't necessarily mandate it, but it was a strong recommendation.
Yeah.
And I would look at you cross-eyed if you were not wearing a mask. And I'd be like, would you put your mask on, please?
Yeah.
You know, and
That
most
is
people
true.
complied.
Yes.
You know, and the people that didn't want to do it, well, great. We don't need your money.
Yeah.
Like, because we're trying to be as safe as possible, but this is still risky. And, you know, of course, that's on the liability waiver. You know, we have COVID. So by coming to dance, you do realize that you are putting yourself at potential risk for COVID. So that in itself is already like a money drainer, because people read that and like, oh, I didn't even really think about it. So I'm not coming.
Yeah.
So it took probably a whole year after we reopened before we got back to nice numbers in classes, which is frustrating for the choreographers because they're used to numbers, and you may have 2, 3, 4 people in class. I mean, one choreographer would tell you her first class, she had nobody.
Yeah.
So that in itself is frustrating to the choreographers. And so trying to keep them motivated while trying to keep them paid also, you know, a lot of it I was doing out of pocket.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
support small business because it was actually my money, but which was loan money.
Yeah.
Because as a physician, if you take out a physician loan, they don't ask you what you're using it for. So,
Okay.
you know, all you gotta say is, oh yeah, I'm a doctor. They will throw money at you.
Wow.
But mind you, I have to pay this money back.
Yes, you do, and interest.
Yes.
So
This was
you have to be
all,
wise.
yeah. So,
Sure.
and now we're paying it back now.
Now you're thinking about- yeah.
Like all the forgiveness is going away as of next month. So
Wow.
support small business.
Yeah, small business is so important. So tell me, Kellye, in all of this, you're still juggling being a doctor.
Yes.
You're juggling the reopening of the dance studio.
What made me
happened?
say.
Yeah.
So Anna was the one that said, she actually said it early on. She said, when we were doing the mentoring thing, she said, so when you quitting medicine? And I was like, did I ever say that I was going to quit medicine? Like, that never even really entered my mind because I'm a doctor. I spent my entire life doing this. Why would I quit my stable job as a doctor to own a dance studio, which is not stable? And so, you know, prior to that, I thought it was crazy. But the fact that she said it was like, oh, well, maybe it's not as crazy as I think it is. So she planted the first seed. It was 2 years before I actually gave it up completely.
Wow.
One, because if I did, I would have to pay back 6 figures to this group that I signed this contract with.
Okay.
Still paying that off. But that was a thought.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's financial instability at its greatest. The group has given me 3 years to pay it off, but because I just wanted to be done, I've paid off most of it. But that was one thing. So, and then, you know, like I said, I just had to kind of grapple with the fact that I was going to be not as stable financially as I like to be. I mean, I like to buy nice clothes and nice purses and take trips. And the thought of giving that up was like, why? Why would I do that? And then COVID was the thing that tipped the scale because, like I said, I saw so many people die, and I said, well, life is short. I have worked my entire 40-something years of life and enjoyed moments, but never could say past college that I really enjoyed life. And so that revelation, you know, when you're, you know, when you don't have a dance studio to run and you're just seeing patients, your off days, you have a lot of time to think because there's nowhere to go. So got really close with God at that point, was listening to a lot of sermons and was just like, I'm going to take a leap of faith and enjoy life as an adult for once.
Wow.
So when I finally got the nerve and I was like, well, I'm going to just have to kind of, you know, scale back on all the cool stuff that I like to do, which at that point we weren't traveling anyway. So it's like, I saved a lot of money from that standpoint, and didn't have places to go. So I wasn't buying all these cute clothes and cute shoes and accessories. So he was like, okay, well, we save money this way. So we'll pay back this money and then just take this chance. So that's Anna is the one that pushed me to say, you can do it. And the entire time she was like, whenever you're ready, you have my full support. I got you, we'll make this work. So it was her confidence in her brand and in me running her brand that was like, okay, God, we're gonna do this. Have my back. She got my back, you have my back.
Awesome.
So that was what really did it. Me being sick of people and realizing that they weren't listening to me, regardless of my knowledge in the field. Yeah. And so when you don't feel like you're being heard anyway, you're like, well, why am I here? Yeah. Exit stage right. Yeah. Stage right.
That's a huge decision. Mm-hmm. So when you made it, how did it feel?
It was scary. It's still scary.
I bet.
Because now I'm like, well, the well is running dry. Yeah. So I got to figure out until we're where we planned to be, because we're just getting back to where we were pre-COVID. And I have all these big, visions for the studio and what we can do and how we can make so much money, but now we're dealing with the economy. So it's like one thing after the other. So I'm actually wrestling with the idea of kind of a remote part-time job just to kind of be able to pay back all this money that's due now.
And in that mix, you had a baby.
Oh yeah, had a baby.
Whoa.
Almost 2 months ago.
Wow.
So, in vitro fertilization.
Stop.
Had been doing that for years, like over 7 years.
Wow.
Couldn't fully do it until I was out of the emergency department, because you have to go and get blood drawn and ultrasounds every other day for so many weeks. And with my schedule all over the place like it was, like we had done the shots, we had done intrauterine insemination, like we had gone along this whole process over a course of, like, by that point it was probably around 4 years or so. And then once I got into urgent care, the schedule was more stable, so I didn't have to be at work until 10 a.m. So all the blood work and ultrasounds and stuff are done like from 6 to 7:30 a.m. So that actually worked out. Whereas I hated it because I had to get up that early. Yeah. As an urgent care physician, I liked not having to come to work until 10. But during that time frame for the IVF, I actually had to be up and then go to work sometimes after that, and then come here after that. So that was a whole...
What a season.
Told you, memoir number 2.
I'm telling you.
Juicy, okay? But also informative, like the first one was. The first one was like almost like a how-to to get into medicine. Yeah. This will be a how to exist and do all these different things. But yeah, so yes, after 10 years, finally have a kid, because once we got married, I got off birth control. Okay. So that was 2012. Yeah. Nothing until 2022. And actually had 3 egg retrievals, 2 embryo transfers. The first one didn't work. And at that point, bunches of money spent, the emotional roller coaster, said, well, I think we're done. It's like, enough is enough, spend enough money, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, we'll adopt. My IVF specialist was the one that kept me going. She said, no, I think we finally got it. She said, this combination of medications actually was fairly successful, even though the transfer didn't work. So let's try it one more time. She said, if you are mentally in a headspace, because she knew physically I was fine, the pain from the shots, it didn't bother me. It's the mental aspect that you have to worry about. She said, if you're fine mentally, let's go. And so Dr. Usadi, she is my angel. Rebecca Usadi with the Women's Institute, I highly recommend her. But she was the reason that I went that one last time. And it's a frustrating process because you get, so many eggs, then you combine the sperm. So like half of the eggs don't take the sperm. So you're cutting, the embryos in half essentially. Then you do genetic testing and then find out that you have one good embryo out of all of them. So I got one shot.
Wow.
Did the embryo transfer? It worked.
Wow.
But you're still worried because 9 years in, you've had so many, almost and didn't know. Because we had a good embryo before and implanted or tried implantation, it didn't take. So, because I had fibroid surgery, so that's that whole thing. So I was like, okay, great, I'm pregnant. I gotta stay pregnant. So every month was like, whew. So I don't think I actually breathed until I was about 24 weeks, and that's where you're kind of, can conceive. 26, 28 is really where you can start to be like, okay, you're premature, but your baby actually has a chance to live at this point.
Yeah.
So I was nervous the entire way, still putting on a good face for everyone. Oh yeah, but I actually didn't tell them like half the world until you could see it. I saw myself dancing and like had on a sort of tight kind of shirt, and I said, ooh, I can see that I'm pregnant in this mirror. So I untucked the shirt and like began, because it was winter at that time. So I was like, I can continue wearing baggy clothes so people can't see. So I didn't tell anyone. I told my mom and my sisters like around 12 weeks. But I didn't tell anyone that could physically see me until I was showing, which was probably around 18, 20 weeks. And then I didn't tell the whole world until probably about 24 weeks or so. So just because you're scared that you're going to have a miscarriage.
Yeah.
So that while running the dance studio. At that point, I had quit medicine. So me quitting medicine, I think, is the reason my body didn't have all that stress. I was able to finally produce.
Wow. And now you have a son?
A daughter.
A daughter?
Yes.
Wow, congratulations.
Yes.
Kellye.
And she looked just like daddy. So it's like I didn't even do anything. But she has all my disapproving faces. So it is hilarious. I'm like, ooh, do I look at people like that? And my husband's like, So it's hilarious because like she has all my personality but his face.
Wow.
My nose but his face.
Oh my goodness.
So it's funny, and he will appreciate this. So he's Black and Korean. She looks like a whole Asian child.
Stop it.
So my business partner Anna was like, I showed her one picture because the first picture she had a little bit of me. Then like the next 3 days later, she looked like completely Asian. And so I sent her a picture and she said, well, I know who the daddy is, but who's the mama? Because she didn't look, she just looked Asian. It is hilarious, but she's absolutely adorable. And like I said, even though she looks like dad because he has strong Asian features, she has all my faces.
Aww.
And I do this thing where, like, when I'm really feeling my dancing, I like stick my tongue out. It's kind of like the Michael Jordan signature. I have the same signature. And I caught her in a picture where she was sticking her tongue out. And my sister, within minutes, put together this, like, collage of me and her. And was like, well, she may have her daddy's face, but she is clearly her mother's child.
Yes.
Put your tongue back in your mouth, Allie. So it's hilarious.
That is so
But yeah. So yes, I'm a mother now.
I'm so excited.
At 44. Yay!
Wow. That's amazing though.
A
Anyone
whole-
can do it, you can do it.
Right.
You're on top of the world.
Yes. Hallelujah.
That's amazing.
Glory to God.
Amen. So you've had quite a journey.
Yes.
So I know before we started talking, we did a little activity together. called
Yes.
a hand map. Is there anything from your hand map that you want to share or that stuck out to you?
The freedom and the peace that I feel at this moment. Despite the fact that, we still have our financial strain, just trying to be a small business in this economy, and me not having the security that I once had as a physician. Glory to God, my husband has a great job. I still feel peace. And because I don't have the stress of being a physician, like literally having the weight of the world on my shoulders, I feel freedom. And glory to God. And glory to me actually being obedient to God.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of times where you're supposed to do something, but you don't do it.
Yeah.
I actually was obedient this time. I actually trusted in God and said, all right, I'm going to put my full trust in you, and not in my ability anymore, but in his ability.
Yeah. Man, I just need to say that even though you've had such a wild ride these last few years, I mean, ups and downs, so many turns and swerves, and to have that faith and to feel freedom, like that's really powerful.
Yeah. Yes.
That's incredible.
It's a freedom that I've never had before, because even when I was in medicine, especially, I always felt like there was that weight. And, it was always responsibility. There was always a responsibility. And I still have responsibilities, of course, but I don't feel that weight anymore. Wow. That weight off my shoulders is amazing. And not to try to deter anyone from going into medicine, but it's so different from where it used to be. Yeah. Like even in my 17 years, I've seen a dramatic shift. And doctors before me will tell you that medicine is completely different than it was back then. Yeah. And so it's not uncommon that people are getting out of medicine. Like I know so many doctors that have quit and were like, screw this. This is stupid. Wow. And it's pitiful because it's like, well, who's going to take care of everybody? Yeah. But until we are respected again, they're going to have an issue. And this comes from the corporations that hire us, because it's no longer our business. It's a business person's business. That's where we are in medicine. That's what the problem is. I mean, I'll go ahead and say it. I don't care. I'm not scared because I'm not in medicine right now. So if I have to go back, oh well, they may look at this interview and rethink. But either way, God will protect me. Put it that way. So, but until they are actually listening to the people who are clinically practicing, I mean, we were making miracles happen every day because we didn't have the staff. They're not paying the nurses the way they should. Even me as a physician, I got a nice check, but I still have student loans. Yeah. I'm like, as a physician who made it through COVID, who was actually taking care of COVID patients, why do I have to still pay school loans? Just because I had the income to pay it? I literally risked my life. Take my loans. That's the least you could do. Yeah. President Biden.
That's huge, though.
Like anyone that practice
every day.
Yeah, none of us should have loans. Yeah. None of us. Like, this is stupid. Yeah. Like, and I mean, I quit, so now I don't have that ability to pay the ridiculous. And I actually had a decent payment because I was able to refinance early when interest rates were low. Some of my younger colleagues, they're paying like $1,000 per month in student loans alone. Wow. Ridiculous. That's crazy. And they practice, I mean, some of them weren't seeing patients like I was, but they're still in medicine. They still were seeing COVID patients, even if it was a small scale. So I'm just like, none of us should have to pay a single school loan ever again because we made it. Yeah. We didn't die. Yeah. Yay.
Man, I'm just gonna be really transparent and say, you're a doctor, you are a small business owner, you're a mother, and you are a very successful, young, I still say you are young,
Yes.
young Black female. Like, how
Don't
does
forget
that
best-selling
feel?
author. I'm a best-selling author too. I didn't even talk about that.
Author. Oh
Two-time.
my gosh, stop it. Like, seriously, tell me, how does that feel? Because, you know, we're really, this whole project is all about equity, and we want to hear voices that aren't typically heard, like your voice.
Mm-hmm.
How does that feel, and what does, share that with me.
From the inside, well, so initially, because I grew up around so many successful people, I didn't even realize that I was part of a minority.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize that at that time, only 4% of the nation's doctors were Black.
Wow.
Yeah. Who knew? Not me, until I heard it.
I didn't know that till now.
Until I heard it on MSNBC. Melissa Harris Perry. She's not on that show, on that channel anymore. But she was the one that said it. And I was like, wait a minute. Because I know so many Black doctors.
Yeah.
And I was like, so, I'm actually kind of a unicorn.
Wow.
And like all these major accomplishments, like me being the first female drum major, I never intended to be the first female drum major at A&T. I just wanted to be drum major. You know, it's like anything that I ever did, I didn't do it to be this amazing person. I did it because either I felt called to it or I really enjoyed it and wanted to do it. So when people would tell me that I was amazing, like I just thought I was like run-of-the-mill average because, you know, I wasn't the top physician. I was a physician. The only time I pretty much felt like I was at the top was when I was the drum major. And even then, I didn't realize it was as big of a deal because I wasn't seeing that there's this small percentage of female drum majors in the HBCU marching band culture. Like, it just completely went over my head. And I'm only now starting to reap the benefit of it because now with the Me Too movement and all these different things and, you know, people realizing that women often aren't heard because they're women, now it's like I'm getting recognized for it, but still not really.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it's like, yay, my people are seeing it as, you know, oh, you're amazing. Whereas the general public is not that amazing. So on the one hand, I'm like, yay, I'm an amazing person. But then on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but I'm still a Black woman in America. So there's that whole piece. And you know, it's frustrating, and some of the post-traumatic stress comes from being a Black female in medicine because we already aren't respected as physicians as much as we used to be, but I'm respected even less because, and I look young. So, you know, I look like a teenager to some people. Without the makeup, I am a teenager. So until I start talking and like throwing out all these terms, you're like, oh, okay, so you may actually know what you're talking about. But if I say I'm Dr. Hall, why do I have to prove that I'm Dr. Hall just because I'm a Black woman? Like, you make me sit there and spend 5 minutes trying to gain your respect, whereas my white male colleagues can walk out there and say they're doctor, and suddenly it's, oh, okay, this is the doctor. I don't get that same respect. And I have some white female colleagues who are in the same boat, but I will say that they get a little more respect than I do. So it's a two-edged sword. It's like, yay, on the one hand, some people are appreciating me and celebrating me, and then on the other hand, it's like, okay, cool, you're a doctor.
Yeah.
Yay.
Do you feel like it's improving or not really?
It's both. For in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't, because we're in such a racially divided country now that whereas some people are trying, other people are using that and you know, building their whole political career on it. So for some people, yeah, for some people, no. It's almost like it's a 50-50 sort of thing. it's literally that divided.
That's crazy. Well, thank you for sharing and just being authentic and real. And I know it can be really intimidating and hard. But
Yeah.
your authenticity really shows.
Yeah. Initially, I was,
Appreciate you.
it's like you're taught as a Black female to just suck it up, and either you don't spill the beans, or if you do, just know that there's going to be backlash, and you're going to be seen as aggressive. And everything is just when people were disrespecting me, and as a physician, if you disrespected me, I'm sorry, you were going to get it back. That's probably not the best thing, and I know it's not the best thing. But I'm like, I may be just forget the small size. I'm a fighter.
Yeah. Really.
But when I would fight, I was aggressive, even though it was more in words. I was never disrespectful, but at the same time, you're going to give me respect. And I'm not going to sit here and just act like you didn't just completely disrespect me or yell at me or what have you, But when I did it, it was, well, but you get paid a lot of money. When my white female colleague will tell you this, because we're close, and she even can see the equity and the inequity. She was offered therapy. I'm supposed to suck it up.
Stop.
You're getting paid.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's kind of, you're told to just either grin and bear it or just shut up. That's essentially how I lived for so long. So that's another part of the freedom, is like, out of medicine, I don't feel like I have to fit in this box, or else I'll get in trouble, I'll get fired. Whereas somebody else will get away with it. Now I'm not in the box, so I'm gonna tell it all.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I know this has been such an incredible conversation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Kellye.
I'm glad to be able to say it.
Well, we are so glad for you and your willingness. I guess I'm just gonna finish with one more question. Is, do you have any additional stories or experiences that you want to share about your experience over the last 2-3 years?
Like I said, I am a 2-time best-selling author. It's because I was featured in an anthology, 2 anthologies. One was just about North Carolina A&T, and just how A&T made us who we are as professionals. So that's the first one I was in. That's my first bestseller. So it wasn't mine alone. It was a conglomeration of people, but I'm still a bestseller. The second one was not just A&T, but about the HBCU marching band world. And so it was a bunch of different schools that were featured. So I was an expert author in that one.
Awesome.
But I'm very pleased with the fact that people are realizing that, HBCU, historically Black colleges and universities.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I just thought about that. So HBCUs were always overlooked. And back when I was growing up, if you went to an HBCU, you were seen as being less than. Like you couldn't make it into the other schools, so that's why you went there. That's not why I went to A&T.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, my guidance counselor, who, a white woman, who didn't mean anything by this at all, she knew I wanted to be a doctor. So she tried to get my parents to convince me to apply to Chapel Hill so I could be a doctor. Because if you want to be a doctor, you got to go to the best school, which is Chapel Hill. Well, both my parents are Aggies. So my dad, he'll always say, well, she can go wherever she wants to, but my money's going to A&T.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted to go to A&T. I wanted to be in the marching band.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I didn't even apply anywhere else, because if I made it, I wasn't going. So why waste the money? Why waste the time? Yeah. Like, I'm all about efficiency. Like, let's do what we got to do. Let's not do excess work.
Yeah.
There's no point. So I'm glad that people are realizing that HBCUs produce excellent people, that we are educated just like these Ivy Leaguers. I'm a whole doctor, and I went to A&T. I went to East Carolina for medical school, so, either way. But yeah, so we're finally, like, people are finally seeing us. Like, this whole past few years has just been about seeing people in general, seeing women, seeing Black people, seeing minorities in general, seeing trans, LGBTQ plus, all of that. It's about finally being seen. And then on the other hand, there's the people that will still talk about you and, ridicule you for what have you. But A&T is the #1 HBCU as far as enrollment. So shout out to A&T, Aggie Pride. I will always say that. But I'm just glad that we're finally getting some recognition, and we have always had to work for our dollars, whereas your Chapel Hills, your NC States, also state-supported schools, were getting way more funding than us. There's been lawsuits. Florida, I think it was either Florida A&M or Bethune-Cookman, one of them, they sued because they weren't getting that state funding that Florida State was getting. They won. These things are happening. And the fact of the matter is that Black people have always had to fight for what some other people were just given. And the fight continues. And we have obstacles to overcome that aren't there for other people. So, it's like we're raised and born into a system that we already have all these strikes, and people will pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Well, you didn't have to. So how are you going to tell me when you didn't have to? And it's not everybody, because of course there's other races that grow up, and don't have the entitlement, but we are a lot of times set up to fail. And even where I grew up, it was majority Black, but it was farming community. So I didn't even know that I grew up in an area of poverty, because my family wasn't in poverty. We weren't, by any means rich. We were middle class, but my parents worked for that. And theoretically, I shouldn't have been successful because of where I grew up. Yeah. But because of the exposure that I had to different places, my mom's from Fort Lauderdale, to different things, I've been to Disney World probably 10 times. Like, how many people can say that in their life? Some people never go to Disney World. Yeah. But for me, it was a normal thing, because my mom's side of the family was in Fort Lauderdale, 3 hours from Orlando. Yeah. So it wasn't a big deal. Like, I was cultured, and that's the reason I didn't see where I grew up as a crutch, whereas it is. Mm-hmm. So just the inequity of the world is something that still needs to be worked on. It's being seen a little bit now, but it's still a lot, and it's still hard.
Yeah. We're trying to help support that and that fight. And
I am very appreciative for you all for highlighting people like me in my studio, my business. And can't wait for you to talk to my business partner, because she's a whole different,
Yes, I'm excited.
We would have never met if it wasn't for the studio, because our lives are just completely different.
Yeah.
So
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kellye, so much. Any final thoughts before I finish?
Be kind.
I love that.
Love God.
I love that.